Joining us is AJ Perez. We saw when I first saw the trailer for it's going to be on Netflix, The Fall of Favre, part of the Untold series. I was like, "Oh my god." I'm not a big I don't know, I'm not a big documentary guy just off the jump, but I'm going to be watching this the minute it drops. I'm, somebody who grew up as a big Packer fan, and career, Brett Favre's career, like directly was my childhood. He takes over. I'm 8 years old. He's the greatest quarterback that I've seen, that my dad says he's seen, that everybody, we just can't believe the Packers are good. And we have this great guy. So it's interesting. And I think for people like me, AJ, there's that Favre maybe doesn't, it exists as a memory. But if there's anybody that is still like 100%, Brett Favre is my idol. I mean, this documentary is going to shatter that image. Is it not?
It could. I mean, there's going to be people who watch this who are Brett Favre and Packers fans, or even USM fans, or Mississippi natives that are still going to be, huge Brett Favre supporters. And they if they do watch this, they may not come away with, the same thoughts of someone who didn't grow up a Packers fan. But I think there's just so much new things in this documentary. I think it will open people's minds, and I think the closing line, I don't want to ruin it. It's kind of like we kind of hit on that. That's how we close the documentary.
It's so many different, angles that you can take with it, from, Green Bay, and then there was the Vicodin thing, and at the time we're like, "Oh my god," but then he did a press conference and we're like, oh, "Okay, we're all human." And then he leaves to New York, and then there's the Jen Sturger stuff, and she's a big part of this. And then afterwards, welfare kind of scandals with his alma mater, and even just growing up. And is all of that covered in this thing? Is this a complete span of his life up to this point?
Yeah, it's basically from birth, and we got some great footage of him as a child to, playing under his dad in high school, in through USM and to the Falcons, and then the trade to Green Bay, and how that trade revitalized Titletown. It kind of brought it back. That was kind of like when Ron Wolf pulled the trigger on that. There were a lot of questions like why we giving away so much for a guy who's like third string for the Falcons that Jerry Glanville didn't give much attention to. But it just changed. It changed Green Bay. I mean, it changed Lambeau. Even it's kind of like it really did. It brought back excitement that hadn't been there for decades. Yes, the Vicodin scandal, and you got to give Favre credit for being upfront with that, because it was before what we all knew, what all became known as the opioid crisis. The Vicodin and everything else that we're still dealing with as a country now. So he was very upfront about that, and there's a lot of this is nobody's all bad or all good, and no documentary should focus on just one part of it. We focus on a lot of different things, from his winning the Super Bowl with the Packers to obviously me mentioned him going to the Jets, and then what happened there with Sturger and then the two massage therapists, and then him going to the Vikings, which I know pissed off a lot of people in Wisconsin.
Yeah, that was I almost actually forgot about that part. Even though that was like, yeah, that was insane. AJ Perez joining us here. Netflix is the documentary, May 20th, the Fall of Favre, and it's going to cover the whole gambit of his life. I think what's interesting with Favre when he was in Green Bay, this is a time where you mentioned it. The Packers were a joke. You got threatened to get traded there. Ron Wolf and that team saw something in Favre that they needed to get, and then he turned into, really, it's been good quarterback play, and the Packers have changed their identity and how people think of them, and it traces back to that. It absolutely does. And part of it too was he was unlike any quarterback that was playing at the time. Gunslinger is still a word we say. He was just like brave and free and didn't care. And, oh, I made a mistake. The next play, fine. It's going to be the coolest thing you ever saw. And then even off the field, like there was a lot of fun video, and you see whatever you saw. That was in an era, unlike what we're in now with social media and everything. It just feels like for some of these guys, and maybe Favre's one of them, like everything that maybe the Packers tried to cover back then, oh, we can't let this get out. It all like comes back now a little bit later in life because we weren't dissecting it the way that we were then. Did you find a lot of things in his time with like the Packers specifically that, oh, there's a reason they didn't want that to be known?
Yeah, there was we have a one local, actually a couple local media figures who kind of hit on that, how he was, things that, you know that may have been covered in Chicago, New York, or LA that didn't get covered in Green Bay. That just kind of just smaller market. That's what happens. I'm not knocking it, but that's kind of how smaller market teams work, before social media, at least. I mean, even going back to 2010 when the Deadspin story came out and the Jen Sturger situation became public. There that was before the Me Too movement. This was like the MySpace days. Facebook was coming on, Twitter was getting going a little bit, but we weren't in what we are in now, where the news cycle's so short and people, even male sports writers will probably cover things differently now than they would have had in 2010. And I think there's so much progress has been made, and maybe you could say progress, you could say social media shouldn't be part of that progress, but we're stuck with it. So there's a lot of things that maybe kind of people that just came and went and people forgot about. That's why it's good to revisit something. And Brett Favre's not that old, but it's kind of like some of this stuff did happen in the 90s and early aughts. So it's going to be a refresher, and it's also going to be something I think even the hardcore Packer fans will learn a couple things that they didn't know about him.
With Jen Sturger specifically, because she's a part of this, and again, it's just like the timing thing. I don't know if for somehow like that did a lot of damage to her instead of like it did damage to Favre, but it seemed like it ruined her more than it ruined him, and I think she goes into detail on that too.
Yeah, and this is kind of one of the missteps under the NFL. There we saw this in the years since with Ray Rice and other situations where they've gotten a lot better. The NFL investigations have gotten a lot better since. I think Deflategate on. I think they've done a lot better job with these kind of in player investigations. But he was only fined $50,000, and that was for not cooperating. He was not suspended. It came and went. Yes, there were jokes at Favre's expense, but it really, really, as you saw in the trailer, it did really upended Jen Sturger's life, and she didn't want this to come out. I mean, this happened in 2008. It came out in 2010 in Deadspin. We run down all how that happened, and yeah, it just kind of came and went for Brett, but it really kind of just really shook Jen. It really shook up her life, and you were going to see all the scars that incident created.
What about the most, I guess, most recent one? Everything that happened at Southern Mississippi, like the welfare stuff, and now he's suing people, and then he's not suing people. So he's in an. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like how I would describe who Brett Favre is today, because I don't know. Maybe he doesn't know. It's just weird. Like he's I don't know. Sometimes looking at his social media, it's like, is he an aggregator now? Is he trying to like what is he doing? It's just he's trying to be more public facing sometimes, and then it seems like he's dialing back, and then he'll get into the political arena, and then he'll like take himself back. I don't really know if he wants to be. Some people disappear. That's fine. Some people, get a job as a color commentator. We thought for sure, Brett Favre would be on TV, and then other stuff happened. So where is he now? And you guys tried to contact him. He didn't want to be a part of this, I guess. But where would you like? What do you think Brett Favre wants out of the rest of his life?
That's a good question. So, like, I was really this. I got into this documentary because I covered the Mississippi welfare scandal, and really, for me, it started in 2017. Before this all happened, it was kind of the start of when this money was some of this federal welfare money was funneling to people much beyond Favre. Favre was just one of 20 plus people,
Yeah.
and many who faced indictment, either state or federal charges. Brett Favre was not charged. He hasn't been charged, and he's the entire time is he said he did not know the funds that went to the volleyball court, $5 million, and then to him 1.1 million that he repaid, and then the other 2 million went to Prevacus. So back in 2017, I was at USA Today, and I wanted to do a media story about his tryout at ESPN, and I'm like, someone someone texted me. I'm like, hey, do you want Brett Favre? You just have to talk about this Prevacus, which got the $2 million. It was a concussion treatment, or where if you get concussed or someone suspects you to have a concussion, you inhale something, and this is supposed to reduce inflammation and reduce the effects of a concussion. So that I don't know about. I cover concussions a lot. This is CTE days and everything else. I covered a lot of that. So I was like, yeah, I'm interested in that, but I want to hear about the ESPN tryout, which is I think it's Monday Night Football, and it didn't. I don't think it went very well from what I could gather. But I wanted to talk to Brett, and it was so but then we went into Prevacus, and I'm like, so when the scandal hit and the national media kind of came and went, I kind of dug back into it since I had this little angle with Prevacus, and that's where I learned a lot about how much he was involved, the biggest investor. He talked about concussions, and he had a concussion documentary that he was a producer of that came out last year.
Yeah.
So he really cares about it. And he said he's had hundreds of concussions after his career. After he retired from the Vikings, he really cared, and he still does care about concussions. We all do. I've had a couple from playing hockey. We're all concerned about that. But it's just kind of how he went about the funds. Now, $2 million from federal welfare funds can't go to a concussion product. It can't go to build a volleyball arena. While those Favre didn't get the money himself, that went to USM and went to Prevacus, and Prevacus is basically defunct, and its founder got charged last year, faced criminal charges over this. So it's kind of this is how I got into it, but really it's like my family's from Manitowoc County. My grandparents are from there. I have lots of family out there. It was also about telling the story of what he did to uplift Green Bay and bring back Titletown, and do all the things there, but also kind of like what being a sports celebrity, especially in a small market. And there's two small markets really, Mississippi and then Green Bay. They don't cover things like they do in the bigger top 3, top 4 markets. So did he get away with things? Yeah, maybe. But it's also about he's a very had a lot of endorsements even post career, a very popular player, and I think he still has that, a lot of popularity. Still, a lot of people are still with him.
Yeah, I'm interested. Again, I'm gonna watch this the second that it comes out. Untold, the Fall of Favre. It'll be on Netflix. May 20th is the drop date. And I think what's going to happen to me is I'll go into it like eager to see the salacious stuff, the stuff that I didn't, that I don't know yet, that I'm like, oh, what else did he do? This bad guy. And then I'll see a highlight. I'll be like, oh, I remember that. Or you just video clips. Because Favre to me seems like one of these guys where I can totally think, I don't like what you're doing. I disagree with things you've done. 5 minutes in a room with him, and I'm like, I love this guy. I just love this guy. And he's always, had that. The small market thing's interesting too, because that has been his whole life, having all of that.
Yeah. Outside of New York.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Then it caught up with him. But
Yeah.
I think like, it's going to be a range of emotions for people that watch it, and that's why it's probably a good subject to do a documentary on. Because how do you explain, like, as my kid starts to get older, and how do I explain? I have his old starting lineups, my old starting lineup. So he's playing with Favre, and one time he's doing bad guys and good guys, and he goes, "Do I put him with the good guys or the bad guys?" And I know this seems like a fake story, but it's not. And I go, well, so how do you, and this is what the documentary is going to help explain, but how do you sum up Brett? You can't. You have to go. If you're going to talk about this, you have to talk about that. But if you're going to talk about that, you have to talk about that. And so I think that's what we'll see.
Yeah, our director Rebecca Gitlitz, like that was that was it. It's like we kind of one of the first meetings, maybe the first meeting we had on this after we started developing the documentary. Is like her mindset. Nobody is all good or all bad. You got to tell it all. You got to put it in the right context and tell the story fairly. And we do that. And there's a lot of good. I mean, you can't overlook what he did. With the records he set, the Super Bowls. He probably should have won one or two more in Green Bay. It's kind of weird that things didn't fall that direction. That's not
Well,
a knock on Favre. It's
just to,
just kind
just
of
to go
just
to
the way it happened.
a quick point on that is something I always say is you give any franchise in the NFL 30 years of Favre and Rodgers, minimum, they all have 2 Super Bowls. So Packers, I don't know what the hell happened there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, it's kind of odd. Domikowski was a great quarterback, but then you go from Favre to Rodgers to Love. It's like the string of like awesome quarterbacks the Green Bay Packers had. Then you compare to the previous 30 years, it's pretty amazing. Like it's yeah, but yeah, it's
Tampa
kind
Bay
of
has
like
2 Super Bowls in 30 years with Brad Johnson and Tom Brady. And they have 20 of those years they suck. So yeah, great quarterbacks, 2 Super Bowls. Okay,
yeah.
you got something in me there. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know how I was like I don't know how the Packers lost to the Broncos that year.
Nobody does.
They were just so big underdogs that game. It was just so. But yeah, that's kind of how things. But that's you can't put it all on one player. But yeah, it's kind of amazing. But it's like the fact that we're talking about how they should have won more Super Bowls. Like look at the last 30 years before Favre got there. I mean, at least 25. Yeah, it's not 30 years. We're going pretty far back to the Bart Starr era there, and all the futility that followed, and up until kind of Favre, the trade for Favre, and things got kind of on track for the next couple decades. But yeah, that's how one player can change an organization, and I don't know if there's been any player in my lifetime that changed an organization like Green, like at least as far as the NFL goes, like Brett Favre changed the Packers.
So the documentary is going to come out. He did not want to be a part of it. Do you expect at some point to hear from him, or even if it's like a statement? Is there more to this to come, or are we just not expecting that?
Yeah, well, we'll see. I don't know. I don't know what I want to watch his Twitter account. I'm not sure how. Obviously, we invited a lot of people to talk who didn't want to talk. So that's one of the hard parts of people who not even just Brett, people close to Brett. It was because you have to make a well-rounded documentary. You can't make it all one-sided. You have to. It was a lot of effort goes into finding people close to Favre, and we had a lot of people who didn't want to talk. And I don't want to name the names, but you could probably guess who they are. And because they're still close to Favre, they're still friends with them, and it's kind of like so I could see that why they didn't want to participate. But it's kind of if we're tasked at telling the entire his entire life story, it makes it harder to do when people close to Favre do not want to speak with us.
Yeah, that's got just from a documentary standpoint. I mean, you're going to tell the story of somebody, and so they can either talk and give their input, but then if nobody talks, then it like sort of delegitimizes this thing, because that's got to be a tough. That's got to be a hard part of what you do.
It's like, yeah, it's a challenge, but we did it. I mean, we did find the people, whether it's a college classmate or a former Packers teammate, we did. We actually, it just took a little longer, but we found the right people to talk to who wanted to talk to us and wanted to lay things out. And so that's something I'm really proud of, because it's kind of, you get a lot of no's, just like I'm being a journalist. For being a journalist for 25 years or so, it's like you're used to that. You just got to work around it, because your job is to tell the full story and tell it accurately and put everything in the right context.
Yeah, I host a radio show that airs at midnight across the country. I'm used to hearing no's from people. So it's a pleasure to have you on, AJ Perez. Again, it is coming out on Netflix, Untold, The Fall of Favre, Tuesday, May 20th. Great to talk to you. Can't wait to see the final product, and best of luck moving forward, and really looking forward to this.
And thanks a lot, Bart, for having me on.